settled in an old hotel, let's say a hotel that had not been used. And Virginia thought, well, they have food, they have shelter, but they can't really work because they have no permits, no documentation, and their status was quite unknown. So she decided that being an artist herself, and please do take a moment to look at Virginia's work in our East Gallery. So being an artist and an art therapist, she thought, what better way to try to get these folks to somehow deal with their trauma, because they all had experienced, let's say, their journey was not an easy one. And so she got them together and asked them to draw their journeys. And what you see here on the walls are the works of 7 artists who told their story. And each one has, I find them incredibly profound and impactful. And I'm now going to turn it over to Virginia to tell you more about it. So thank you again for joining us. And
and of course, it always needs a whole city to build something up. So our thank you also to the friends who had us here, specifically to Anthony, Claudia, and of course to Susan and Jeffrey, and a lot of more, but I forgot the names.
That was very impressive, thank you. But also just a quick thank you to all the folks that are part of the whole Works Gallery team. And I'll name each and every one of you a little bit later. Here's Virginia.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm extremely grateful to Rose and to Susan Morse, who's here somewhere as well, and to all the staff, and to Manfred, and all of this community here in LA who's been so generous and welcoming. I'm just going to say something, I think, about the origins of this, and then if anybody would like to ask me a question, please do, or if I suddenly run out of whatever, please just come in and make comments. This started, I think, really because I lived for 15 years in Ghana and Ivory Coast in West Africa, and worked as an artist there. And when I went back to Italy, I personally was very excited in our small community when I suddenly realized that there were some African people who'd moved in. I realized because I noticed them walking up and down along the old Flaminia Highway, which is a road that has been traversed for over 2,000 years now. And so there was something really historical just in seeing these new people walking up and down. As you probably know also in LA, apart from the very young population, the most people who walk are also the people who can't afford a car. So that's the same in Italy, and the fact of them being there meant that I could find people who would perhaps understand the work I'd done in West Africa in a different way, with the familiarity of those who know where the images that I was making were coming from. So at the beginning it was a completely self-centered, self-interested meeting for me, but as soon as we started talking, I just did what artists and art therapists do, and I thought, well, what can we do now? And we met down at this Hotel California, which we call Hotel California, and I just realized that tonight. That's maybe why I'm here. And just decided to try and do something together. It took a while because even the body language of these men was a language that spoke totally of shame and defeat. And so how does one change that into feeling that having gone through what is part of an enormous exodus and is really part of history and is being talked about by people all over the world, usually in very negative terms, but always with an opinion. How does one change that and say, instead of being a victim, instead of being only a survivor, I am also a person who is in a new place with new people, and I can define myself in different ways. So I try and work on that as a therapist. Well, I call myself a therapist in this situation, but also as an artist, because I'm just excited by visual language. These people came from Francophone and Anglophone West Africa, so they often didn't have a common language. They might have one of their own languages that traversed the frontiers, but not necessarily. So, and they didn't speak Italian at that point. So also for them, telling stories through visual images was a way of communicating, as well as being a way for people within our local community to connect with a common humanity. I just connected up with them, you know, in very simple visual and verbal terms, the idea of imagination and image, the fact that the word heart, cuore, in Italian, like coraggio, like courage, like courage in English, comes from the Latin word for the heart. So that we had to put the heart back into things and be warriors about this, and make a very strong visual statement that talks about imagination. So the right to imagination, to me, is a basic human right. These people are being looked out after in terms, at the moment, of food, accommodation, legal help, and medical help. They don't have any money really to go around and explore, so the only option was to explore, you know, on a piece of A4 paper or on recycled wood. We use mainly recycled materials because we have to also be very, very sensitive about the fact there are very many poor people within the Italian community, how do you say it in English, the autochthons, is that English? Autochthon, the locally born community. And also there is a strong connection between abandoned material that one can reanimate, and the idea of wasted, abandoned lives that can also be regiven dignity. So, and also if you're working with recycled, non-precious materials, you can really risk and explore. So we started off just saying, if you can risk leaving your country, walking across the Sahara, going to Libya, trying to find work, then being put in what they call the campus. Some of you have been sold. All of you had to bribe your ways out of these camps. Then get on very, very leaky boats and pray, because they're all deeply religious people, either Christian or Muslim, and pray that you will arrive at the other side, even though when you left home you had no intention at all of going to Europe or to Italy. If you can do that, and if a few days later you walk into a space where there's these very strange white women who are saying to you, you know, here we paint, here we draw, and these are the materials we have, and you're very welcome, and we'd love it if you want to try. And we think that if you have had the courage and determination and imagination to traverse that enormous physical, but also emotional and spiritual landscape, then you probably are going to find a way to be able to make some marks on this little piece of paper. Some of them took a long time. Fordet took months and months and months. And he kept saying, I can't draw. And so obviously there I pulled out all my learnings from being in Scotland when I did my art therapy training about mark making and the courage to create. And there I'm very grateful also to an American called Rollo May who wrote this book, The Courage to Create, I think in the 50s or maybe early 60s. And then the kind of strange cosmopolitanism of this is that when Fourier finally did start making some marks, then I could say to him, have you ever heard of a very famous artist from West Africa called Frédéric Boulay-Boisbré? And he said, no, I don't know any artists in West Africa. And then I can pull out images on my phone and show him. So I can also talk to the Nigerians, there's none of the Ghanaians here, but about the dynamic nature of the world of sign painting in West Africa. So any of you who've been there will probably know about that. And mirror back to them aspects of their own worlds, original worlds, that I am seeing in the images that they are making, but they have probably not realized. So I think that this is all about cross-fertilization. I'm telling the positive story today because I'm really sick of the story in Italy and probably here as well. We're living in a moment where this is seen only in tragic, catastrophic terms. When I look at these young men, I actually see some really powerful, virile, energetic young people who have their lives in front of them, you know, so it depends what aspect you're looking at here and where you're coming from. I also subscribe very much to the idea that I was speaking to a lovely lady about this before, about the idea that there are those who travel for food and there are those who travel for food for thought. I suspect that most of us in this room travel for food for thought. I suspect that many people here have ancestors who traveled for food, and that's why it might be in America. I also have the same from Ireland in Australia, but we're all, you know, people that have, when we travel, we have to learn about different worlds and we see the interconnectedness of everything. And we have a big choice, and I think artists can really be quite visionary about this because I see evidence of that. I don't see enough evidence of, and for this I'm extremely grateful to Rose, I don't see enough evidence of the people themselves telling the story. I see stories being told about them. So I think that my position in this project is to be a filter, really, to encourage and facilitate the process, the emotional process also, because behind this there's been months and months of getting to a point where certain stories could be put down. And yeah, so that's my position, is to kind of create a safety net around that. And there I must say, getting older and being female, I really put that into action. I really thought about those queen mothers in Ghana. I thought about how in West Africa the women really can have a kind of power in terms of younger men in the society. So I pulled out my knowledge of that quite effectively, I think. But it's really, really hard for these people. It's really hard for Italians. It's not going particularly well. But then you have situations like this, and there are many, where we can imagine together, because this is the person who is telling the story, but we are all witnesses. And as the great psychoanalysts say, you know, in order to recover from any trauma, one must have at least one person in life who says, I believe your story. So these people have had, I think, the fortune to be with us and to have met people who say, we believe your stories. Not only do we believe them, but we think it's incredibly important for the rest of us that these stories be put down, because unbelievably, even the worst moment of this story in 30 or 40 years, when you are no longer a 20-year-old, when you're a 60-year-old, you might not remember. So get it down now, because this is your witnesses to something extraordinary that's happening in humanity at the moment. So I'm very proud. I'm very proud that they did this. I'm very moved. And I wish they were here, but this is part of the story, that they can't travel, but their works can. Their works can only travel, though, if there are people who are open to seeing them, but also to presenting them. So this is the third time, because in Italian, where is Rose? In Italian we say non c'è due senza tre. So this is the third time that I'm going to say thank you, Rose. And thank you all for being here.